This is a pretty darn small room. What was your reasoning, your motivation behind even creating a room here?
Well, I had a lot of reasons. One, I wanted to expand my showroom. I have limited space in the showroom to show different levels of equipment, different systems. And I kind of maxed out the rest of the building. And recently had several customers that came in that kind of put up a challenge to me, basically saying that it wasn't worth investing a lot because they had a small room and really didn't have the right kind of a setup opportunity. And in that process, I said, I need more space. I should try a small room myself, show people I can make big sound in small spaces. So we kind of started down that path.
Because I remember we had that, it was kind of around when we had that event coming up, like our annual music event.
Yeah, so we started out, with this room. When I looked at the room, it's 10 by 11, which is, not a great size, plus the corner kind of chopped off. Has these kind of interesting features up high, architectural features. And when I moved in here, I looked at the layout, kind of picked the setup to be on this end, thinking that would work the best.
Just because of the additional length?
Well, actually probably more because I was thinking about ultimately having a TV up here, and I didn't want to block the view this way. So it really is a little bit of a toss-up in this room, as to which way you would lay it out when you walk in. 10 by 11 kind of leaves it kind of a toss-up. Usually you have much difference in lengths, or length and width. So I chose this direction first, and that was an interesting first step because it was a little painful. I started to go, uh-oh, maybe I can't make good sound, in a small space. We started playing with different speakers in here and different equipment.
Well, before, because I remember I remember when before we brought the Macintosh, we brought the integrated in, but you did some pre-treatments in the room, if I remember correctly.
I think I put some canvases
Some very
up.
basic pre-treatments.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I know that a room with wood floors and hard walls and windows is going to be kind of bright, a little bit reflective. So my immediate reaction is to put in some kind of a throw rug and some canvases with acoustic material behind them, just to dampen the room a little bit. And that's kind of where I started, and then from there you decide if you want to do more or less, depending on where you're trying to take the room, and how practical it is to do in the room.
After you kind of found out where the room was leading you as far as the sound.
Yeah, so, I put stuff up and it moved. It moved because I changed the room. So I started on this wall. You can see we're now on this wall, and that's kind of a fun story because we had an amazing battle with sound on this wall. We tried several different sets of speakers, different electronics, and had crazy varying results where some things sounded really good, had all this extra bass, some things had too much bass.
Well, a lot of people are running into that, when they're trying to set up a room and they don't have, near as much as you do. So like when you set up the Macintosh, let's see, we also set up that Rogue audio system. So what were the results?
I mean, we tried Rogue Audio, we tried Macintosh, we tried D'Agostino.
And the speakers were the
I think we tried the Blue Sound piece, but we tried just like all kinds of stuff. We tried Olympica 1s, the Sauce Fiber Olympica 1s. We tried
the Guarneri's.
The Guarneri's, yeah, the Guarneri Traditions.
And what was the first thing that you noticed what was the sound with the Guarneri's?
Well, so it's been a little while now exactly, but I remember peculiarly the bass was ridiculous. Like I was like, what the heck? It was insane. And these little bitty speakers making disproportionately too much bass.
Okay.
Right? Oddly enough, we put the Wilson tune tots in here, and they had no bass in those positions. Okay, well that's confusing. So we eventually played and played and played. It got pretty good sound. It was pretty balanced, but it always sounded kind of compressed and just never really opened up.
So okay, so we got the tune tots set up in here. And the bass was non-existent.
Yeah.
So then, I remember you wanted to bring in the couple of stereo subwoofers.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So what was the result with that? Like, how did you tune it? How did you get it set up? And then how pleased were you?
Well, I mean, it's a little vague now, my memory of the details. I just remember it was pretty pitiful. I really was not happy with the sound. I mean, overall, I thought, okay, a lot of people would think this is good. You know, maybe they think it's worth doing something, but I wasn't excited about it. I mean, it's just like, okay, you know, kind of, we had a show coming up and I was kind of sweating going, how am I going to do this at a show? And not feeling that good about the sound. And I had mentioned previously, as we, you know, before we got started on it, that may not be the way, because I looked at the ceiling, thought, you know, the vault's that way, maybe it might work better this way, but one of the things to consider. So, you know, eventually I said, all right, bite the bullet and try this way. And
to refresh you, you got the Tune Tots and the T7Is dialed in. Bill Pugh dialed them in, and then you dialed them in even more.
yeah.
And then you said, all right, it sounds pretty good.
Right.
You didn't say it sounded horrible. It sounded pretty good.
It sounded okay.
For about a day, you felt it sounded fairly good.
Yeah. I convinced myself on this setup that it sounded good, okay? Knowing it really didn't. Obviously knowing, because eventually I was willing to go move everything, you know.
So, and then you canceled the event because the room was not ready.
That's right. I didn't feel ready for the event, yeah. I wasn't ready to present the room yet.
So, yeah, because then a few days passed, you know, and you thought the room was okay, but then finally, you know, you're like, yeah, I am not satisfied with this at all.
Yeah.
So then, you know, then I think over the weekend, you kind of did a wrecking ball in this room. So why did you do that? You know, and what drove you to do it? And what did you first do?
You know, I'd canceled the event, and I was not happy with the sound I was getting. You know, like we talked about, I convinced myself that it was okay, and it was okay, but it wasn't what it could be in this room, and I didn't really know that yet.
It wasn't okay
You know,
for you.
I was concerned that might be the best sound you can get in this room, okay, and that may be it. If that's the case, I would say it's a little hard to justify going to a really high-end system if the room's going to, you know, limit you that much. So at some point, I decided to just bite the bullet and move everything just to see what it sounded like. I'm like, I can always put it back, you know, and I moved it, and as soon as I placed it, I mean, I was like, okay, this is better for sure, you know. And,
Night and day.
It was immediately superior, you know. But interesting enough, the more I played with it, the more better it got. You know, it kind of distanced itself even more because it really opened up. And eventually I got the subwoofers mixed in, and, you know, I played with the treatments a little bit, placed them a little more carefully, you know, trying to calm the room nicely in the right ways. And now it's a pretty spectacular little room. You know, most people find it very enjoyable to sit here for extended periods. You know, listen
One
to
of the
music.
things that I thought was hilarious is when we had the Guarneri set up, and it sounded so muddy. We're on the south wall.
Yeah.
And when we had the Guarneri set up in this room not long ago, where these Olympicas are now,
Keep your hand down, you're in the box.
and they sounded incredible.
Yeah. That reminds me. Before I got the subwoofers, I brought the Sabrinas in here, a full range speaker, and said, I wonder what those will sound like. What we could do those, right? And to my surprise, they sounded fantastic. In fact, a very good setup for the Sabrinas. The bass was super full and deep, you know, effortless. Probably almost an ideal setup for them. And it was after that we went to the monitors and brought the subwoofers. And I don't remember the exact sequence, but the discovery was fun because really all the speakers sounded good, you know, in these positions. So, you know, the big lesson there is I didn't know for sure it was going to sound better this way. I had to try it, you know. And I tell my customers, it pays to play. If you're willing to put in the effort, take the time, methodically go through a process of moving speakers and positioning, listening to the same, you know, pieces of music tracks that you can stand listening to for many, many times, that have adequate information to reveal what your objective. You know. But yeah, if you're willing to put in the effort, maybe with a little help sometimes, a little guidance can be helpful. I could say is you can spend a lot of time spinning your wheels. What did we spend? I mean, they spent at least a week or two.
We got you switched everything over to this side of the room. Everything we put in here sounded good, and so I want to get to your method. You know what you did. If you were to summarize what somebody could do if they want to convert a room that doesn't look like it's going to work. All right, let me first say the gear that we have.
Right, okay. There one real quick, easy is hire me. You know, I can take care of that for you. But you know, if you want to spend 2 weeks, you know, 4 or 5 hours a day of playing around with speaker positioning and trying to figure that out, you can figure it out yourself. You know, but you know, with some help, some expertise, guidance, maybe you can speed that up a little bit. You know, and if you'd rather just have someone else do it for you, obviously, we might do even a little bit better job. Possible.
So just kind of some of the things that you did to actually pre-tune this room and tune it. Okay, so you wooden floors, so you carpet. I mean, is there carpet padding under here?
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned before. I like wood floors with throw rugs. It's a nice acoustic space. And then I like canvases on the walls with acoustic material behind them. Tends to calm the room down nicely while enhancing the look, which is kind of
So you've got no glass in this room at all?
Well, other than all the windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, which if you notice, the blinds are different right now, but I play with the positioning a little bit when I go to listen because it actually affects the sound significantly in the room. Not a giant amount, but...
You keep them about 1/3 open, I noticed when you...
Yeah, it has to do with I'm just trying to make it so it acts like a diffuser, so some of the sound can get through. You know, like a slit, and then there's a nice angle on the other surface. You know, so you know, anyway, a little bit diffusive rather than having the sheer glass surface there. If you want to hear the room get really funny, is we could roll those blinds up, you know, completely out of the way, and they have all those glass walls that wreak havoc on the microphones. You know, so the blinds help a little bit. The soffit things, those were in here, kind of funny. They had little naked babies on them, which, you know, doesn't quite fit the audio room, but this used to be my wife's office, and actually before that it was like a photography, it was her office, I guess, but
yeah,
this was kind of part of her decoration. It was a photography studio, which took a lot of baby pictures, so it made sense. But I kind of like the look, and I love the acoustic effect. That's just a basic wooden thing with some padding on it, you know, but it dampens that portion of the walls nicely, so.
I mean, what do you think? Are those helping more with some of the highs, or?
Yeah, it just gets rid of some of the echoes, you know, the upper frequency echoes, you know, so upper mid-range highs, you know. So.
And now, how about for some of the like for the bass, the absorption? Like I know we took the tube tracks out of here.
So right now, kind of make a point is that the room sounds good as is. Would you agree? We took.
Definitely.
We've been listening it both ways with the tube traps, with and without, and I'd say the tube traps, it sounds better. You know, yeah, it really cleans it up a lot. The tube traps make it a very nice addition. However, the room sounds fantastic on its own. It doesn't really have to have the treatment. It just takes the treatments, take it to another level. Interesting you mentioned. So we have canvases, pictures, all soft stuff. Basically, you could use tapestries, that kind of stuff. If you look up high in my niches, those are potential like bass trap points, and there's things you could do very interesting there. But the things you can't see, other than with maybe some pictures that Rich might run, are the baskets and things are full of heavy insulation, acoustic insulation, that kind of thing. Again, to try and manage some of the bass in those cavities. And so then the other pieces are put and kind of placed in a manner to create a more diffusive environment. So
yeah, the biggest thing that made this room really pop was speaker placement.
Oh,
What did you, you know, why did you put the speakers, you know,
well,
where they are?
so,
Asking
you know,
for somebody that might be new.
So with experience, you know, I can look at a room and kind of walk around and listen to it a little bit and do some sort of room whispering, whatever it is, and figure out the right placement for the speakers in the room. Generally, I mean, you can locate things. In fact, there's one of my product lines has a whole process for teaching us how to locate the best locations in the room for the speaker positions.
Kind of like rules of thumb, or
Well, no, Wilson Audio has something called the Wilson Way, which where they've trained us how to locate the best places in the room for the speakers, and that's a powerful tool. It does definitely. It's very helpful when you go to set up speakers in a room. It works best with Wilson products. Wilson speakers are generally very neutral. And so those places that we find are the most neutral positions, and so their speakers sound the best there. Those speakers that aren't necessarily neutral might deviate from those positions slightly because they want something slightly off of neutral to compensate perhaps for something that's not quite neutral in their own. And you can achieve spectacular results with that kind of a setup, but it's just a little different.
like you brought, like these speakers, you've got them, what, about 1/4 of the way or from the wall, based on the size of this room?
I'd say it's probably
1/5.
third. It's not. Maybe it's a third. What is this? 3 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably close to a third.
Okay.
Yeah. So which is pretty common. And I usually put the seat close to a third. I mean that's a common recipe. Doesn't work in every application for sure, but if you have a dedicated room, that's a pretty common setup is thirds.
How about the stereo subwoofers? Because I know that that's in all your rooms you like having for 2-channel subs. Why do you have the subs placed inside the speakers?
Well, for combination of where they fit and where they sound best.
Okay.
So you have to find the physical space, the real estate for the speaker, and then placement makes a big difference with woofers. Yeah, there's not a lot of space in here. But the placement of the subwoofer is gigantic as far as how it affects its performance and the matching to the speakers. So we spent a little time, and those definitely are the best places for them. So the subwoofers, you could take any good system and add a little more depth and a little more information in that region and increase the soundstage space and depth, which it's kind of weird because it doesn't really do mid-range, but somehow it's filling in and adding to the mid-range and or connecting to the mid-range is the way I would put it. But make wonderful additions to the
Well, I've heard you say
speakers.
a number of times that with 2-channel, if it's not a 3-way speaker, you really kind of need subwoofers because it enables you to get all the information that the artist intended.
Yeah, I mean, so the example, the Olympica Nova 1s, I mean, it's pretty much a full range speaker. Most people would call it full range for their realistic purposes, practical application. But they don't go all the way down, which there isn't. Some people would argue there isn't that much musical information down there. I would argue that once you own subwoofers, you'll change your mind. But there's also something to do with the size of the speaker relative to pressurizing the room, filling the room with sound with ease. And they won't produce low bass with a lot of energy. You're going to hear some low bass. You're going to hear it coming out of that speaker, but it doesn't have enough of it to make you feel it. And the woofers add that. And if it's done right, it connects to it. So it just feels like it's part of it. And so it can be very helpful. But interesting enough, that's true all the way up to giant speakers. Even my biggest room, I have subwoofers doing the very bottom end, and it adds to the bottom and makes it better. So I was surprised that I was able to put subwoofers in this room. I thought, no way I'm going to put a pair of relatively large subwoofers in here and have it work and not overwhelm the room. I just figured it would just be too much and there's no way, but they sound really good, right? I mean, I'm very happy with the results. So they're not working very hard. They could probably do much larger space, but they do exactly what I want them to do. They're adding to the bottom just the way you want it to.
You don't notice a subwoofer. It's just
there. When it's right, it's just there. It's part of the speaker. Your speaker is just better. It's more full, more,
Yeah.
What's very interesting about it is, for years I've told people, well, if you're in a condo, I really can't go the subwoofer route, In movies, that could be a real issue. If you're in a shared living space where you're sharing walls with other people, large subwoofers in movies, it's a lot of bass, But what's interesting is for music, a lot of people end up turning their music up to be able to feel the bass. Okay, so, but with subwoofers, you can fill in that bass and you can control how much you get. So realistically, you can actually play your music at a lower volume and have it be full, which means you're far less likely to get the turn that music down, from the kitchen, So subwoofers, they can really make a nice addition, even in environments where you might think it shouldn't work. And that was the case here. I didn't think it could work in this room, and they work spectacularly well, actually. So.
Well, I mean, stepping back from when we first got it tuned into that wall, we had the tune tots, and we had the M10, and the tune tots are only, go down to like 65, I think.
Yeah.
And when you put those REL T7s in there, I mean, you had a full range speaker.
Yeah, really, it did fill in the bottom nicely. But you don't need the subs. I mean, they sound good without them, but the subs are a nice addition for sure.